Hi, welcome to another video. We're in a bit of a strange angle today, but today we are doing my April wrap-up. This angle is obviously not my normal angle. I feel like you're looking right up at me, but I have to keep my leg elevated. I definitely can't sit where I normally sit because that always cuts off blood flow to my leg. And we don't want that. So we're on this kind of weird angle. I wonder if I can prop you up. I couldn't do that for my little vlog clip because I needed this book for that. But hey, we can... Oh. How's that? A little bit better. A little bit better. I hate it. How's that? Oh, not bad. Now we just have to not move. So hi, welcome to my April wrap up. I've got a lot of books to talk about because I read 40 things in April. Are you proud of me? I'm proud of me. Some of them are quite short, so we're gonna go through as quickly as possible, and hopefully this video will not be a million years long. They're also playing Mario Party, so apologies. I also had 17 5 stars this month. So out of those 40, there was 17 5 stars. Just let that sink in. Only 2 DNFs. And only, I didn't have a single 2-star, I don't think. And I only had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3 stars. I feel like it was a great reading month. Anyway, let's start from the start. First off, I read An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. Technically, I was reading this at the end of March, but I finished it in April. This is a story set on a ship traveling through space, and it's a very multi-story ship, and it's kind of class and race segregated, a la Titanic. And we follow a girl from a lower deck, so a lower class, and she's a doctor of sorts. And it's very much about like the idea of going into space without, like, the crew is the people on the ship are so big, they've lived their whole life on the ship and generations on the ship, and they don't really know where they're going or what they're trying to achieve, and kind of no one knows anymore. And that's kind of the exploration. But there's ghosts and mystical diseases and things going on, and let's just say I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. The audiobook was also really well done, and I think it added an extra layer of depth and intrigue, especially around the way the actors did the accents and things that really lent a sense of level of class, and that just difference between the different levels. Like, that really was hit home by the way the accents were utilized, and I thought it was done amazingly. Next up, I read volumes 1, 2, and 3, the whole set of White Sand, as well as the like text version of the first chapter in Arcanum Unbounded. So I kind of read all of White Sand. April and I were buddy reading Sanderson stuff until we caught up, and this was what we were up to. I don't think she actually finished the whole thing. I know I read all 3 and the bit. I think she read the bit and 1, and then I kind of told her what happened in the rest because she was getting bored, which is fair enough because it was pretty slow. I didn't enjoy volume 1 very much, but volume 2 and 3 picked up a lot. So I gave it 3 stars, 4 stars, 4 stars for the 3 different volumes. I think volume 2 was my favorite of the 3, but I did enjoy volume 3 as well. But yeah, wasn't my favorite. I think I would have enjoyed it more in a novel form. The art style wasn't my favorite, but the art style got better in books 2 and 3, which is why I liked them significantly better than book 1. And the story was interesting, but not like the most complicated thing. It was fun. It was an interesting world. Yes, we read that. Next up, I read Vicious Spirits, or Dokebi Vicious Spirits by Kat Cho. This is the sequel to Wicked Fox, or Gumiho Wicked Fox. And it's a companion sequel. It has some of the same characters, but kind of follows a slightly different plotline. It is a sequel, but it's primarily following a different set of characters. I ended up giving this one 3 stars, but in a way that I really enjoyed it. I just think this series is lacking a level of depth that would make it a higher rating for me. Like, it was really fun, but it got a little bit boring for the middle and really sped up towards the end, so there was a little bit of pacing issues that didn't work perfectly for me. But I did have a fun time with it. I do recommend this duology. I think they're really fun, and I would definitely read more from Cacho, and I give this one 3 stars. Then I read Fireheart Tiger by Aliette de Bodard on my Kindle, by which I mean my iPad on the Kindle app. This is a novella. I was going to say short story. It's a novella following a girl who is the princess to one area. De Bodard is Vietnamese, I think, and it's definitely set around like inspired by Asia. So they're Southeast Asia. So she's the princess of one area, but they're having a lot of problems with other people kind of trying to invade, including this group that's kind of Western. And she had been sent to like foster in this Western inspired colonialist world country, and fell in love with the princess there. And so it's a little bit of like a enemies to lovers to enemies kind of little female romance. But obviously the power dynamic and the imbalances there really play a large role in the story. And she came back home after a fire that like burnt down the palace. Sorry, I had to clear out my camera a little bit. Hopefully that is still kind of in the same space. She was in this fire and she went home, and it's so good. I don't know how to describe it without giving things away, but it is so good. It's a really great novella. I've read another novella from this author before and really enjoyed it, but it was part of a larger sci-fi world that like I felt like I was missing things because I hadn't read previous stories in it. This stands alone a lot better. Oh, sorry, I'm like moving my foot and everything's moving. This worked as a whole a lot better, and I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 5 stars. Then I read People Like Her by Ellery Lord, and this is a literary thriller kind of story. It is a thriller, but I feel like it's not that thrilling. This I will say, this I will say focuses a lot on, it has a lot of trigger warnings for child death, child abuse, infant death, miscarriage, those kind of elements. So if any of those things are a problem for you or would be difficult for you to read, don't read this. Basically we follow a mummy blogger who has her whole career, I guess, has built this image of herself as really relatable, so things all kind of go wrong, and that's what she's talking about, like, oh, how hard it is to breastfeed, how hard it is to make your baby sleep, all the hard things of motherhood, so that she's relatable and likable. But in reality everything goes really easy for her and she doesn't have all those hardships, and she's curating it all for a social media presence and a social media following to make money. And there's a thriller element where her children, things start happening with their family because of their presence online, and it's very mysterious. I don't want to spoil anything, but obviously lies are unraveling, things are going wrong. And I enjoyed the plot and things. It wasn't my favorite thriller ever. I do think it took quite a while to build up, but I was fascinated for a large portion of the time. Like, it was pretty intriguing. But the actual final reveal kind of was a bit of a letdown. I give it 4 stars. It was good. I didn't absolutely love it. It wasn't my favorite thriller, but I don't read them very often, so like often they get a slightly higher rating for me than they would probably otherwise get if I read a lot of thrillers. Then after that I read Curse of the Divine by Kim Smejkal. This is the sequel to Ink in the Blood, this duology. I give this 5 stars. I freaking loved this. KJ and I buddy read this. And it was so good. Was it what I expected coming out of the first one? Not at all. Was it amazing? Yes. One thing I will say though is this world has, I don't even know how it would work, but their gender is presented by like a color that comes off their body. I think of it like a plumb bob on The Sims, but like it's not like that, but it comes off their head. And the main character is gender fluid between she, they pronouns, which is presented on her little plumb bob thing. And people can see that when they look at her, but the text itself only uses she pronouns for her. So there is that to consider. I think you could have just done a bit better. Like, they could have used mixed pronouns for her so easily, and I never noticed them doing it. It seemed to always be she pronouns, even though she used she, they pronouns when other people were referring to her. The actual narrative itself only used she pronouns, even though it's shot in third person. So there's that. But this is very queer, otherwise, like all the characters have interesting intersections with gender and sexual identity, and I thought that was super fun. It's about tattoo magic and ink magic, and this one kind of blows out the world and expands everything so much more. Really, really enjoyed it. I do think the first one had better vibes. Like, this one is very different in its thematic tone and coloring. Like, this one's gold and red. The other one was just black white with a hint of red. This one's got the gold tone coming in, and that on the cover even visually represents, like, to me, the differences between book 1 and book 2. Book 1 is very dramatic and dark and gritty, but despite being not, like, the narration style's a little bit lighter than that. But this one keeps the narration style the same, and we're following the same characters and the world's expanding and stuff, but the actual, like, vibe of the whole book has a little bit more color and vibrancy to it, which it makes sense if you know what the plot is, but I don't want to give it away. So yeah, I had a great time reading this. It's really interesting and really fun. There are a few plot elements that kind of I was like, wait, what's going on? But overall it all came together and I had a great time with it, and I gave it 5 stars. It was just so fun. Then we had Miss Meteor by Taylor, no, was that actually what I read next? Yes. Miss Meteor by Taylor Kamer and Anna Marie McLeanmore. This is obviously Latinx, magical realism, kind of fantabulism, in a pageant competition, but one of the girls is a star. Like a literal star from the sky. I had a great time with this. It was really fun. These were all 4 readathon prompts, but I can't remember what prompts they were for now. They were 4 not safe for workathon prompts. And I think it was just not safe for workathon I was doing that month. Let me check. No, hang on, maybe it was for no prompts. Oh, it was just for Bookopoly deal. And this also went for the Books and Lala's Buzzwordathon reading challenge, which was Galaxy themes, so Meteor. This was just really fun, and it was so enjoyable to read. I gave it 4 stars. I think it could have gone a little bit further to really hit me in the 5-star feels, but it was really solid and really good, and I enjoyed it to pieces. If you like anything you've read from either of these authors before, I think it probably leans more akin to Anna Marie McLeanmore's previous works than like Taylor Kamer's young adult duology, which is very dark. But it was so fun. I loved it to pieces. It was really, really good, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read The World, or I DNF'd actually, The World Between Blinks by Ryan Groudon and Amy Kaufman. This is a middle grade. I didn't really get very far into it. I DNF'd it really, really early because the characters were, they were speaking Spanish. One of them had lived in Spain. One of them had a set of grandparents that were Dominican, I think. And it just felt forced and awkward, and it didn't make sense. It was shoehorned in. It didn't make sense for kids who were code switching. It felt really weird, and it felt a bit appropriate-y, and I just wasn't about that. I didn't feel like reading it, so I DNF'd it, but I can't really comment on anything more because I didn't read it. I got like 20 pages in. And then after that I read Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. I listened to this on audiobook. I loved it. I'm tempted to buy my own copy, but I'm on the fence. I gave it 5 stars. It was so good. This is about a girl who's like 16 and she ends up caught in the music industry with an older man who is grooming her, and it's so distressing, so sad. The audiobook was done so well, and it was so good. I think everyone should read this. I think it's a really well done example of grooming in a book setting, and how insidious it is, and how easily young girls can be manipulated in that way. I thought it was incredibly well done. I gave it 5 stars. I need to read more Tiffany D. Jackson because this was stunning. I've read Let Me Hear a Rhyme, but I want to read Monday's Not Coming and some of her other ones. Allegedly, I think, have audiobooks that I want to read, but this was so good. Then I read The Name of All Things by Jen Lyons. This is a huge chunky fantasy, second in a series. It's called A Chorus of Dragons. This is the second book in A Chorus of Dragons, and we're following Kieran still from the first book, and Kieran's kind of like the prophesized savior. He's either going to destroy the world or save it. And I really enjoyed book 1, and I really enjoyed book 2. I also give it 5 stars. Some people find these really dense and confusing, but I don't get it. Like, I do, because there's multiple perspectives, and sometimes you just have to know that it's not giving you information on purpose. It's withholding things from you on purpose, but I don't mind that. So I had a great time with this. I thought it was so good. I gave it 5 stars. It's some of the best high fantasy I've read lately. Like, to be honest, I don't read a lot of it, so I tend to enjoy what I do read, but this was so good. I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Artemis, Fowl and the Opal Deception by Ian Colfer. This is the 4th Artemis Fowl book. This was technically a reread for me. Yes, the 4th. Technically a reread for me, but I had basically no recollection of what happens, except for like one thing, but I couldn't remember how it happened. I just knew it had happened. I really enjoyed this. It was fun. I do love this series, and I'm glad that they're sticking better in my mind now that I'm rereading them as an adult compared to when I was a kid. I had a great time with this. It was super fun. I totally recommend this series. There were a few little microaggressions that were so like acceptable of their time, and I'm just like, but they're micro. I haven't noticed anything macro that I've noticed. And it was so good. It was so fun. 4 stars. Then I read The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Dannon, which is the sequel to The Roommate. This follows, what is her name? Natalie? Natasha? Why can't I remember the character's name? Naomi. So we're following Naomi, who is a ex-porn star who now works for the company that was kind of the part of the plot of The Roommate. So I don't want to talk too much about that because I'll spoil it. But so she's an ex-porn star, and she's kind of working in sex education now, and she ends up getting employment with this rabbi who's trying to get a younger demographic into his temple? Is that the right word? Please correct me if I'm wrong. Do Jewish people go to temple? I can't remember. I'm bad. So it's like a weird kind of friends to lovers kind of thing. And she's always been like, sex isn't about intimacy. So this is her kind of like breaking down her walls around intimacy, and it was really good. I didn't love it as much as The Roommate, I think because it was slow burn and there just wasn't enough sex scenes for my liking. The Roommate had a lot more, and I liked that balance better in The Roommate. So this was good, but I didn't love it as much as I love The Roommate. I give it 4 stars. Next up, I read listened to a short story, and that's The Haunting of Tramcar 015 by Pijale Clark. This is the second in a series that there was 2 short stories or novellas, and there's going to be a full-length novel which I've pre-ordered, so that's why I was making sure I read this one before that came in. So this is a short novella set in a like steampunk-esque magical blended Egypt. The first one was A Dead Gin in Cairo, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed this one as well. This was about a spirit on a train that was being haunted. Mika, I'm busy. I thought it was really good. I gave it 4 stars, I think. I can't really talk about it much because it's a novella, but it was really fun and I really liked the world, and I can't wait to read the full-length novel. Then we have We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faizal, which is the first in a duology. I really enjoyed this. I was actually surprised. I thought I know that some people found it pretty slow. Like I know April thought it was really slow and boring through the middle, but really liked the start and the end. I liked it the whole way through, but I think it was because it had short chapters, so it kept me moving. I do think the plot slows down a lot during the middle, but I didn't mind it because it was short chapters and it kept my brain engaged. I ended up giving this a 4 stars as well. This is following a girl who's a hunter, but in her little area of the world, women aren't allowed to have professions, I guess. Definitely not allowed to be hunters, because that would imply that women are equal to men, are just as good as men. And in their world, something happened that was caused by women, and it's considered that women were the downfall of the problem. And we also follow the prince, who is an assassin, and they go on kind of a mission. They both end up at the same mission together. I don't want to spoil anything because it gets pretty complicated, but I really enjoyed book 1. I've ordered book 2. Actually, I have hauled book 2 by this point. And I can't wait to read it and finish off this duology. This was so good. I added it to my TBR last minute after everything that was going down in the month. And I really wanted to buy book 2 to support Hafsa, but I ended up really loving this. So I can't wait to read book 2. Then I listened to The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. This is another thriller, kind of domestic thriller. I think I figured out that domestic thrillers don't feel like thrillers to me because they take so long to ramp up. This one is a domestic thriller inspired by Jane Eyre, The Wife Upstairs. And we follow Jane, who has like cut off all evidence of her previous life. She's taken the name of Jane and she's acting as a dog walker. She's kind of cut off her whole past and she's moving forward as Jane, and she kind of ends up with Rochester. And it's all very dark. It was gripping. I really liked it. It has a pretty, like, it has a twist that's predictable and then a twist that's totally unpredictable, and it went boom boom, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I think the audiobook was fun. It was fun. Then I listened to Princess Floralinda and the 40 Flight Tower by Tamsin. Ooh, our books arrived at Dimmicks. By Tamsin Muir. This is Princess Floralinda and the 40 Flight Tower by Tamsin Muir. This is a novella following a princess at the top of a 40 flight tower, and each level has a different monster on it, and she's seen lots of princes come and try and go up the tower, but they never get anywhere near her, so she decides she's going to go down and defeat all layers to get down. I enjoyed this. It was fun. It reminded me a lot of things by Catherine M. Valente, like the Deathless and the girl who circumnavigated fairyland in a ship of her own making, that kind of thing. But it was really enjoyable and fun. I gave it 4 stars. Another 4-star book was An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. This is a fairy romance. I liked this. I will say it's like 80% vibes. I feel like the plot's a little bit all over the place and I didn't really see where it was trying to go for a large portion of the book, but it was vibes and fun. It's kind of very dark in the terms of like fae, but it was a very fun story and I had a great time with it. It was really good. 4 stars. Then I read 5 short stories. I'm just gonna fly through them really quickly here. I have a whole dedicated vlog for them. They were all 5 stars, which was so impressive. I don't even have what the authors' names are, but if you go check out that vlog, they're all clearly outlined in that vlog. So we have Little Free Library, Masquerade Season, Blood is Another Word for Hunger, that one was by River Solomon if I'm remembering correctly, Annie Without Crow, and The Girlfriend's Guide to Gods. That was the 5 short stories from Tor.com that I read for that vlog. I'll try and link it in the cards if I remember, but I gave them all 5 stars. They were all really good. I then read 4 short stories that were part of the Famous Files world from Sylvain Nouvelle. So that's file number 2, 247, 1743 and 2491. I gave these 4, 3, 3 and 3 stars respectively. They're all pretty short. They were all relatively interesting. I didn't know these existed, but I'm glad I read them now. They were interesting. Next up, I read Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second and final book in the Nikolai duology. If you haven't heard about this, it's part of the Grisha series. I did talk about this a lot in a vlog. I had a spoilery section of a vlog where I was talking about this when I read it. This is chunky, number 1. I ended up really enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars because I do think there were some things it could have done better. And I didn't absolutely love it to pieces, but there were some things I really enjoyed. I talked about it in my vlog. There were some things that I thought didn't go far enough and didn't quite make sense, but other things that I just like personally had a great attachment to and thought were really fun. And I was like enjoyed the ending even if I thought some of it didn't quite make sense. So I gave it 4 stars. It's a complex high fantasy series. Obviously the TV show just came out. If you haven't heard of it, I probably can't sell you on it. Then I read A History of What Comes Next by Sylvain Nouvelle. This is a sci-fi set around World War II, following a girl and her mother who are kind of clones of each other, that their job is to get people to space. And they're kind of guiding the world in that direction. And there's also a group of men who are also clones who are also trying to stop them from doing that. In classic Sylvain Nouvelle fashion, it's not really told in traditional story, it's told in dialogue. And I really enjoyed this. I listened to it along with the audiobook because it's a full cast audiobook, as the Themis files were, and I loved those, so I thought I would love this. So I read along with my eyes while listening, and it was a great experience. I gave it 5 stars, I think. Yes, it was so good. Then I read Persephone Station by Steiner Lecht. This I gave 3 stars. It's a sci-fi set on a planet. It's kind of a Wild West kind of sci-fi. What's that called? I know in fantasy it's like Flintlock fantasy. Is it Flintlock sci-fi? Not sure. I didn't love this, but I think a lot of it was about the way the audiobook was presented and not the book itself. It's pretty chunky. It follows a lot of characters and a lot of things are going on. They're all kind of criminals. They're all trying to like solve a problem. But I found I had trouble keeping track of what the problem was and what characters knew what and things like that, because the audiobook was all told through one narrator. And there was just a lot going on, and I found it hard to follow because I couldn't keep track of who was who, because the one narrator didn't really change voices much, especially between points of view. So I had a hard time following along. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I read it with my eyes. I gave it 3 stars. It was still pretty solid. It was solid. Then I read The Silvered Serpents by Roshni Chokshi, which is the sequel to The Gilded Wolves. I gave this 5 stars. Honestly, I think these are just absolute vibes and they're amazing. So I was describing these as Indiana Jones meets, like, what did I say it was? Oceans, like a proper heist. And I totally stick by it. It's not a, like, everyone compared it to Six of Crows, but I feel like Six of Crows is a bad heist example because the heist is very meh in Six of Crows. It's not the strongest suit of Six of Crows, and this is much more, it's historical. It's fantasy, but it's historical fantasy. It's set in our world. And it's much more about, it is much more about artifacts and things, which is why I feel like it's very Indiana Jones vibes. This one destroyed my heart. I do think it's much more character driven maybe than the first book, though all of these are very character driven. But the ending destroyed me. I need to read book 3 like yesterday. I gave this 5 stars. Then after that, I read The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. This is another thriller, kind of a sci-fi thriller. We follow a woman who has developed the technology to make clones, but she uses them, like sells them for a purpose, like to be a body double kind of thing. And she thinks they don't have consciousness, existence or anything, like they're not real people. So that's her ethical go around. And then she finds out that her husband has made a clone of her and divorces her for her clone. And then things curtail from there. And it's nuts. It's crazy. It's 250 pages of nuts. I loved it. I thought the science was mostly really well done, and it felt like real academia. Sometimes people do science and academia and it feels corny and not quite right. This felt right. And I thought it was really cool. I enjoyed it so much. I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Beyond the Ruby Veil by Mara Fitzgerald. This is a fantasy set in a really contained little world where one woman makes all the water for the world by taking people's blood and turning it into water, and our main character's like, fuck that, I don't want to hand over my blood. So she kills this person, which means they're without water, and she's on an adventure to try and find water. It's very much a villain origin story, but like she's a villain from the get-go. She doesn't give a shit. She's looking after herself and herself only. And her dynamics are really interesting. Like, honestly, she's the best part of this. I do think the world was weirdly insular, and I didn't really explain well enough why it was insular. Like, the world building was a bit up in the air for me. But the main character was so interesting that she's what kept me driving through this. It's relatively short. I think I'm going to pick up book 2. We'll see. But I enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Ring Shout, which is also by P.J. Clark. This is a graphic novel, a novella about, I think it's the kind of like alternate reality Deep South, where the Ku Klux Klans did some kind of seance-y kind of thing and started turning into these demon dogs that have to get killed and destroyed. And the main characters hunt these Ku Kluxes. It's very much about mystical darkness, evil, hatred. The audiobook was so good. I kind of wish I had a physical copy and read along. I feel like I would have got a little bit more from it, but I freaking loved it. It was so good, so dark, very thought-provoking. I gave it 5 stars. Then I read The Project by Courtney Summers, who's the author of Sadie, which I really, really loved. So I was very excited to pick this up. This one's about cults. And I can understand why people didn't like this as much, but I personally loved this and gave it 5 stars. I thought it was really well constructed. It really does something with the way it approaches cults, and like, oh, it was so good. It was really, really good. I thought the whole way through it was just so clever in its development, and I just loved it to pieces. It's a young adult thriller-esque about cults. It was freaking good. 5 stars. I then read The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, which is about a girl who goes to kill herself, and because she's just so depressed and everything is the worst. And then when she attempts suicide, she ends up in this library where she can pick any potential life she may have led. So every time like a choice was made and it branched off, she could go back and change that choice. And it's her kind of exploring all these potential other lives. This I thought was so well done. It was super easy to read. I flew through it. It was so good. It obviously has some trigger warnings and is depressing, especially around the suicide kind of stuff. But overall, I thought it was so well constructed. I gave it 5 stars. Loved it to pieces. Then I sadly DNF'd a book I was really excited about, and that's A Curse of Roses by Diana Pinguisha. I read about 60 pages of this, I think 65 pages, and I just really couldn't get behind the writing style for some reason. It was just not working for me. I was really struggling, and I'm not quite sure what was the thing that was making me struggle, but I just couldn't get my head to work with it. So I ended up DNFing it. It's a queer story about a girl who she's cursed that whenever she touches food it turns into flowers, so she can't eat anything. So she's kind of wasting away, and then she goes to seek out a solution to this. Theoretically, I wanted to really love this. I just couldn't get behind the writing style, so hopefully I can pass this on to someone who will really love it. And then finally I read a couple of audiobooks. So we have She's Too Pretty to Burn by Wendy Hurd. This is inspired by, not quite a retelling of The Picture of Dorian Gray. We follow two girls in their romance. One of them is a photographer, the other one has a phobia of being photographed, but the photographer girl takes a photograph of her which like goes viral, and everything kind of spirals from there. It's very dark. It's definitely a like YA thriller, but again for a long portion doesn't feel like a thriller. But it is dark and gritty, and the ending fucked me up. I was absolutely obsessed with this. The audiobook was really well done. 4 stars. And finally I read The Death of Vivekogi by Akweke Emezi. This I gave 5 stars, and is about a queer young man who dies, and it's all kind of like little bits of his life and also how his friends and family are dealing with post his death as things come out. This was so good. 5 stars as well. Freaking amazing. I loved it to pieces. It's so sad, but also so well constructed and so well done. I would totally recommend it. So those are all the 40 books that I read in the month of April. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you've read any of these and would like to chat about them down below. Otherwise, I'll see you soon with another video. Bye.